Songwriting for me is the thing that makes me feel special in some way. That I feel elevated in some way. It's the one aspect of my life where I don't feel mediocre.
We were married under cherry trees, under blossom we made our vows. All the blossom comes sailing down through the streets and through the playground. The sun would stream on the sheets, woken by the morning bird. We'd buy the Sunday newspapers, but never read a single word. People, they no good. People, they no good. People, they no good at all.
Many people thought the Australian singer and songwriter Nick Cave wouldn't live beyond the 1980s. When he and his band, The Birthday Party, arrived in Britain at the beginning of that decade, their concerts were orgies of self-hatred, audience disdain, and ear-bleeding intensity. A skeletal and confrontational frontman, Cave's lifestyle was as extreme as his performances, and he seemed to be heading for a drug-fueled rock and roll implosion. Yet, alongside this violent persona was a serious musician, and 20 years later, backed by his band The Bad Seeds, Cave is now one of the most acclaimed songwriters of his generation. He was born in 1957, the son of an English teacher. Cave's influences are as much literary as they are musical, and in 1989 he published a critically acclaimed novel called And the Ass Saw the Angel. He's acted in several feature films and written screenplays, but it's for his songwriting that he's most well known. In Archipel South Bank Show, we look at the world of Nick Cave through his songs and the artists that inspired them.
Well, my daddy left home when I was 3, and he didn't leave much to Ma and me, just this old guitar and an empty bottle of booze. Now, I don't blame him 'cause he run and hid, but the meanest thing that he ever did was before he left, he went and named me Sue. Well, I grew up quick and I grew up mean. My fists got hard, my wits got keen. Roamed from town to town to hide my shame. But I made me a vow to the moon and stars, I'd search the honky-tonks and bars and kill that man that gave me that awful name.
Watching the Johnny Cash show on TV with my mum and dad when I was, I suppose, about 9 years old or something like that. It seemed like the most radical thing I'd ever seen. The Man in Black. I hadn't even thought of music as being kind of an evil thing before. And it was Johnny Cash who sort of put that spark into me, I think. Nick the Stripper was as close to a pop song as The Birthday Party ever got. It was a kind of celebration of evil. Very strange, twisted little song.
Nick the Stripper's in the great tradition of roll self-aggrandizement. It's just, you know, it's a song about the singer himself, you know, like a Bo Diddley song or something in a kind of perverted form. It's about Nick being wild and uncontrolled and untamable.
What The Birthday Party were doing was putting forward some version of hell, but it always felt like we were reaching up from the gutter in some way. My father was an English literature teacher, and he was very much interested in poetry and theatre as well. And he always considered the written word to be at the top. And I suspect that he considered rock and roll to be at the bottom.
His father had instilled in him this love of literature and this sort of refreshing way of interpreting books, including the Bible, you know, as a work of literature. It's quite important to say this. As much as there is faith in Nick's songs, there was always this sense that he can play around with the sources, including the Bible. And God's always there on his shoulder.
We've laid the cables and the wires. We've split the wood and stoked the fires. We've lit our town so there is no place for crime to hide. Our little church is painted white, and in the safety of the night we all go quiet as a mouse, for the word is out, God is in the house. God is in the house. God is in the house. Now no one's left in doubt. God is in the house.
I was 3 years in the choir, so I had quite a good understanding of the Bible just from being in church a lot. Once I started art school, I became very interested in the religious painters, and I started to read the Bible a lot, especially the Old Testament, and was just fascinated by what I read. My songs started to fill up with this kind of imagery. I guess I gave up reading the Old Testament after a while because it seemed to be having a bad effect on me. And I think my lyrics were starting to labour under it somewhat. And I started reading the New Testament. What attracts me to Christ is that he's baffling because he is a divine figure, but he's acting very much as a human being. And in that regard, he is understandable. God is in the House came about from driving through small-town America with my wife on our honeymoon. And we met people and we talked to people, and there was that idea of civic pride coupled with a fear of the evils of the outside.
Homos roaming the streets in packs, queer bashers with tired jacks, lesbian counterattacks, that stuff is for the big cities. Our town is very pretty, we have a pretty little square and a woman for a mayor. Our policy is perfect fair, now that God is in the house.
It's really about community, and there's a lot to be said for that, I think. But there's also, I guess, it's restrictive in some way in that it's often fearful. Fear of the outside closing in.
Post-crucifixion, baby. Post-crucifixion and all our stuff. Oh, it's a wild world. Oh, it's a wild world. Oh, it's a wild world. Hey, it's a wild world. It's a wild world. Hey, yeah, hey, hey.
That song is about two people against the world. And I think that a lot of my songs are about two people against the world. I saw the world as a kind of punishing place, a bad place, a place of chaos. Certainly my life felt like that. We drank a lot. We experimented with drugs. We took a lot of drugs. Took a lot of drugs for a long time. And our life was yeah, lives were very much reflected by the kind of music that we played.
Scratch, scrape, scratch, scrape, scratch, scrape, scratch, this winning thing.
It was clear it was a dead end, that if we wanted to continue to do something, we had to change. I went back to Australia. I think I sort of drifted around for a year or so. And I think Mick sort of found me and put the idea of starting another group. And so we put together the Bad Seeds.
The Bad Seeds were a much more focused band. They were, and I'd not patronise them in any way, but they were Nick Cave's backing band. Whereas the Birthday Party was this maelstrom of noise where every part was sort of equal and often equally disordered. Whereas this, to me, felt like quite an old-fashioned band who were there to do a job, and that job was to illustrate these lyrics and illustrate that music.
The lyrics became more focused. Words weren't just used as kind of weapons. They were used to put across my particular idea of the world at that time.
Here comes a Tupelo, here comes a Tupelo, yeah, yonder under the horizon, yonder under the horizon, starting a light, and something every time, and something every time, Tupelo. Oh, Tupelo, in a man's town called Tupelo.
Tupelo is based on John Lee Hooker's extraordinary song about the flood of Tupelo.
Happened a long time ago. A little country town. In Tupelo, Mississippi. It rained and it rained.
I remember first hearing him when I was 19 or 20, and it was just one of those moments where the tone of his voice, the kind of like laconic way he put this line across, the guitar playing, which was extraordinary and kind of radical guitar playing. You know, it really redefined all my ideas, I think, that I'd had up to that time.
That was women, and that was children. To screaming and crying. Lord, we have no one to turn to but you. Please save us, Lord. Little country town, Tupelo, Mississippi. Tupelo is gone.
Oh, go to see my little children. The Sandman's on his way. Oh, go to see my little children. The Sandman's on his way. But the little children know. Yeah, the little children know. They listen to the beating of their blood. 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 The Sandman's blood. The Sandman's blood. The Sandman's blood. The Sandman's blood. Oh God, oh Tupelo. Oh God, oh Tupelo. Oh God, oh Tupelo. Oh God, oh Tupelo. Tupelo. Yes.
Nina Simone is hugely important to me. She is the real thing. We were obviously far from the experience of the blues people. But for me, from a literary point of view, there was just an extraordinary, brutal, haunting use of words.
Ain't got no home, ain't got no shoes, ain't got no money, ain't got no class, ain't got no skirts, ain't got no sweaters, ain't got no perfume, ain't got no love, ain't got no faith. I ain't got no culture, ain't got no mother, ain't got no father, ain't got no brother, ain't got no children, ain't got no aunts, ain't got no uncles, ain't got no love, ain't got no mind.
I tend to think that she sang other people's songs better because of how surprising and her renditions were and how much she made them her own.
Ain't got no water, ain't got no...
Not that many years ago, I was hosting Meltdown South Bank, and I was called to her room, and she was sitting in a wheelchair, huge, with kind of gold, kind of Cleopatra makeup on, and this sort of a horrific expression on her face. And sort of sitting around the edge of this room were these kind of her kind of flunkies who were kind of all quaking in fear of this woman. And I asked her, you know, what do you want? And she said, I want you to introduce me. I want you to get it right. And I said, okay. And she said, I am Dr. Nina Simone. She was so terrifying and so belligerent. I'm like, okay, fine. And then she did the concert. She sat down at the piano, took the gum she was chewing out of her mouth and stuck it onto the Steinway, and glared at the piano like it was her enemy and just thundered into this song. As the songs progressed, they got more and more beautiful, and she became inflated with the whole thing, and it was just an absolutely chilling thing to see. And by the end of it, she'd been kind of transformed and redeemed in some way.
I got my hair, got my head, got my brains, got my head, got my eyes, got my nose, got my mouth. I got my sense. I got my arms, got my hands, got my fingers, got my legs, got my feet, got my toes, got my liver, got my blood. I got life. I got my freedom.
Objects on their fields, a red cup, twisted mark, the face of Jesus in my soup. Those sinister dinner deals, on meal trucks, wicked wheels, a hooked bone rising from my food, all things that are good or ungood.
And a murder seed is waiting, and I think my head is burning, and in a way I'm yearning to be done with all this measuring of food, of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And anyway, I've told the truth, and I'm not afraid to die.
Interpret signs, the catalog, a black tube, a solid.
Where are we, driver? Oh, this looks very different from where I used to live. Yes, it's. I operated in a very small area in Kreuzberg, I think, and I probably didn't really get to know Berlin very well. Everything that I needed was in Kreuzberg. It was an incredibly vibrant, exciting place. We weren't getting the kind of recognition we thought that we deserved from London, really. I did a concert in Berlin We were kind of, I guess, adopted to a degree by the Berlin scene.
He was the reigning king of darkness in Berlin. And of all the dark and grungy places, he would show up late at night. They were the underground heroes. And people dressed like Nick and spoke like Nick. And I mean, there was a real reverence. He was the reigning king.
Everybody here came from somewhere else. Any artist coming from New York or every musician coming from Australia would be very much welcomed in West Berlin just because, yes, please, be here. Tell us that this is a great place. Tell us, please, this is a great place. We would like to believe it. It is a great place. We live on the edge of poverty, but this is a great place, yes.
This is my room. I lived in Dresdener Strasse, in this little room, decorated with a lot of religious paintings and pictures of naked women all over the walls. And big, buxom women. But in that room, I wrote The Mercy Seat. I began to warm and chew to objects and their fields. A ragged cup and a twisted mop, the face of Jesus in my soup, those sinister dinner deals, meal trolleys, wicked wheels, and a hooked bone rising from my food. All things good or ungood, and the mercy seat is a-waiting, and I think my head is a-burning. In a way I'm yearning to be done with all this weighing up the truth. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and anyway I told the truth, and I'm not afraid to die. Mercy Seat is a kind of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds standard, really, but only because the song lends itself to many different interpretations.
Interpret Simon Kellogg, a blackened, toothy scarlet fog. The walls are bad black bottom kind, the other sick breath in mine, the other sick breath in mine. The other sick breath in mine, the other sick breath gathering in mine.
Well, their stories from the chamber of Christ was born into a manger. Lives of a ragged stranger, he died upon the cross. I might have said it seemed so fitting in his way. He was a carpenter by trade, or at least that's what I'm told.
And the mercy seat is a-waiting, and I think my head is a-burning. In a way I'm yearning to be done with all this weighing of the truth. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and anyway I told the truth, and I'm not afraid to die.
It's an extraordinary song, you know, written in the voice of someone waiting on death row and reflecting on their life, and not being apologetic or not being regretful. And not being afraid to die. And I thought, you know, it had all that deep, dark Southern Gothic in there. It had the blues in there, and it also had this weird Old Testament feeling of, I did what I did, and an eye for an eye, and now it's my turn.
My kill hand is called evil. Where's a wedding band that's good? 'Tis a long-suffering shackle, coloring all that rebel blood. And the mercy seat is a-waiting, and I think my head is a-burning. In a way I'm yearning to be done with all this weighing of the truth. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and anyway I told the truth, and I'm not afraid to die. And the mercy seat.
Through the years in Berlin, I was writing my book, And the Ass or the Angel. And pretty much that's all I did. I just sat in this room day and night and tapped away on this manual typewriter.
It was his brother who tore the call on that, the morning of their birth. And as if that sole act of assertion was to set an inverted precedent for inertia in his life to come, Euclid, then unnamed, clutched a hold of his brother's heels and slopped into the world with all the glory of an uninvited guest.
The book is about a small religious community in a town called Eucalor. The dealings of these people are all watched over by a boy who lives up in the hills who is a mute, called Eucrid Eucro. And he feels he is betrayed by the townsfolk and seeks to bring their cult to its knees.
The noonday sun spun in the sky like a molten bolt and hammered down upon the tin roof and tarred plank sides of the shack. Inside sat Pa, at his table, surrounded by his ingenious contraptions of springs and steel, sweating midst the bleeding heat while greasing his traps and trying in vain to closet his ears from the drunken ravings of his wife.
It's like some strange hybridization, a kind of demented implant of deep south Gothicism into harsh Australian soil. In terms of an orthodox narrative, I don't think it's necessarily one of the most gripping novels, but it is. What is significant about it is that it is beautifully written, and it's of a piece with the lyrical sensibility.
I mean, the book itself was certainly a product of the lifestyle that I was leading. And indeed the songs that were written around that time. Past the ivy-covered windows of the Angel, down Athenaeum Lane to the cathedral, through the churchyard I wandered, sat for a spell there, and I pondered my back to the gates, my back to the gates, my back to the gates of the garden. This is the Angel Hotel in Bury St Edmunds. Periodically, I would look at a map and go to places that were sufficiently far away from the temptations of London and kind of hole up in a hotel for a few weeks and kind of clean up, take the cure. I need to get away from London because my drug taking, was way out of control, basically. And this is the sort of thing someone in that position kind of does, I guess. I mean, in regard to taking drugs, it was something that I did. I think it was something that everybody did. It's the one job in the world where you can actually arrive at work stoned out of your head or completely drunk and everyone applauds you. I wrote a song called Gates to the Garden, which is about looking out this window and the journey down to the cathedral and the churchyard next to it.
Fugitive fathers, sickly infants, decent mothers, runaways, and suicidal lovers. Assorted boxes of ordinary bones, of aborted plans and sudden shattered hopes, all in unlucky row. Yes, in unlucky row. Oh, in unhappy rows, up to the gates of the garden.
I'm not exactly sure about why this is, but some of the more optimistic songs, which in a way this is, came out of the most dire sort of circumstances.
It doesn't surprise me to learn that it was written off the back of a geographical from Nick's experience of active addiction, because, that's a state of mind that I'm familiar with myself. And, William Burroughs, another addict writer, described the image hunger that occurred to him in Withdrawal from Heroin, and the kind of intense nostalgia, almost sickly sweet nostalgia that accompanied it.
Won't you meet me at the gates? Won't you meet me at the gates? Won't you meet me at the gates to the garden?
Thank you.
For me, the great love songs certainly are the ones that have within it an ache. It is that ache that gives it its depth. It's the melancholy. I married my wife on the day of the eclipse. Our friends awarded her courage with gifts. Now the nights grow longer and the season shifts. I look to my sorrowful wife, who is quietly tending her flowers, who is quietly tending her.
I do agree with Nick when he says when he gives the love song, not just as a genre but within the whole field of songwriting, a particular high status. I do agree with that, and I do think that like the non plus ultra, the ultimate song is a love song.
The Nick Cave love song is always distinctly different from a love song per se that someone like Burt Bacharach would write or Lennon and McCartney would write. Tends to be sorrowful, tends to be mournful, tends to be full of melancholy, tends to be about lost love.
I read this essay by Lorca. He talks about that being this unexplained sense of sadness and sorrow and things. And I think that that's preoccupied me for quite a while. And I think it's this essence in the love song that gives a love song its depth, its spirituality.
The water is high on the beckoning river, and I made a promise I could not deliver, and the cry of the birds sends a terrible shiver through me and my sorrowful wife, who is shifting the furniture around, who is shifting the furniture around.
The Sorrowful Wife is a good example of what I'm talking about, because it is setting up idyllic Arcadian situations, but something is not quite right, so that the song takes on a melancholy form. But it is actually a love song, it's a wedding song. We sit beneath the knotted yew, the bluebells bob up around our shoes, which is where I sat with my hugely pregnant wife at Kew Gardens. And it was an idyllic situation.
Now we sit beneath the knotted yew, and the bluebells bob up around our shoes, and the task of remembering those telltale clues goes to my sorrowful wife, who is counting the days on her fingers, who is counting the days on her.
There's something that attracts me to the pastoral setting or the idyllic setting that's on the point of collapse, that this kind of beauty that we can take hold of at times is very, very fragile.
When it comes to the idea of using the actual kind of meat of your relationships with other people in your art, it's actually what defines a serious artist. You know, the problem with a lot of popular music is that it makes those references so general as to be anodyne.
The more personal songwriting, I suppose, came about with The Boatman's Call. And as much as I love that record, there's an element to that record that disgusts me, in the sense that I think at that time I was like some kind of thing that sort of sought out disaster, you know, and kind of digested it and sort of excreted it out again in the form of a song.
In the case of a couple of songs on that album where clearly people are going to know who the song is about, I don't think that that's really advisable. I don't feel very comfortable with that.
Smile and a heart-shaped face, comes from the West Country where the birds sing bass. Got a house, big heart where we all live, and plead and counsel and forgive. Her widow's peak, her lips I've kissed, her glove of bones hanging off her wrist that I held in my hand, her hippie mom and her sad old man.
West Country Girl would be a very good example of a song that is specifically about someone, and I think it's pretty well known now that it was about his relationship with Polly Harvey, another singer from the West Country.
I don't think it does the songs any favours, that you can't listen to a song and think, well, that's about that and that's about that person, and that's what was happening in his life at that particular time and all of that sort of stuff. You don't need all that baggage.
Human heart, kill me, and love up to the brim and chill me, and rebuild me, I'm begging you, with something to like fall into, and as much more than that, West Country girl with a big fat cat, who stares into her eyes are green, and meows, he loves you, and meows like a
More recently, I've tried to take a more detached, objective role in writing songs. Even though they are still autobiographical in a sense, I feel I'm standing more outside of the whole thing, and in that way they are possibly more inclusive. He Wants You is about a man moving towards the object of his love, who waited asleep in an idea-free sleep. She hadn't yet been born, completed, until he kind of penetrated her with the force of his love, and he moves slowly towards her, and really that required a kind of circular chordal structure. So that the structure of the song didn't lock down the lyrical line too much, and the lyrical line could flow through it. So it just became a series of, a circular series of chords with a kind of nifty little melody. Through the darky road, chained to the oar in the night, and the wind that blowed horribly round his ears. Oh, under the bridge and into your dreams he soars, while you lie alone in that idea-free sleep of yours. You've been sleeping now for years, and he wants you. And he wants you, he is straight and he is true. Beneath the hanging cliffs and under the many stars where he will move all amongst your tangled hair and deep into the sea. Ooh, you'll awake and walk and draw the blind and feel some presence there behind and turn to see what that may be. Well, babe, it's me, and he wants you, and he wants you. He is straight and he is true. Oh. With the song He Wants You, I don't think it's autobiographical in the sense that I sat down with a particular person in mind, but it's a dreamlike song. You know, it's a fantastical song.
His songs really deal so much with a desire for a pure love, or with a desire for, with this longing for peace, in spite of all the unrest and in spite of all the turmoil that's happening inside of him.
I think a lot of his love songs are really songs of spiritual yearning, dressed in Ann Summers. That's perhaps a slightly trite image, but in some sort of erotic finery. And I think the fact that he's displaced it to the third person makes that all the more evident.
W.H. Auden talked about the traumatic experience waiting to happen, that the child waits for it to happen in order that his life becomes a serious matter. Certainly for me, that was the death of my father when I was 19. He died in a car accident. He was there one minute and gone the next. That had a huge impact, and for many years, and still does, I imagine, over what I've done creatively. Very, very much after that, I left Australia, and I just, very much, I can see this now, but it was very much about that I just kind of rocketed forward and kind of didn't really stop.
My memory of it is that he just put it away very quickly and then moved on and didn't really deal with it at the time, which, is then, of course, it's going to come back. And it's certainly in the 80s it came up at one stage and he denied it outright, but then that's to be understood. I think he kind of came to terms with it and saw it for what it was quite recently.
Perhaps, I don't know, perhaps these were songs that I was writing were kind of songs for my father in some way, or some way of keeping the idea of my father alive in some way.
don't believe in an interventionist God. But I know, darling, that you do. But if I did, I would kneel down and ask him not to intervene when it came to you. Well, not to touch a hair in your head, leave you as you are. He felt he had to direct you into my arms. Slow it down. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms, oh Lord. Into my arms.
I often have a feeling of my father being present in some way. There may be an element of me writing songs to him, but I'm not so sure about that.
To each burn a candle for you, to make bright and clear your path, and to walk like Christ in grace and love and guide you into my arms, into my arms, oh Lord, into my arms, oh Lord.
My wife and I came here a year ago. I do like the kind of rotting grandeur of the place. What the journey has been, if any, is to make some order out of the chaos. For that reason, I like Brighton. There is a sense of order about this place.
I think he's writing a different kind of song, which, in inverted commas, is an adult love song about adult concerns, including, how do I do this? Where am I going? Can I go out on stage and sing these songs without having to be some kind of shadow or parody of my younger self?
How do you prevent yourself from becoming a burnt-out rock star? Well, there are several solutions for that. First of all, never become a rock star. Then second is just notice that there's another life except being a rock star. That helps a lot. And the third thing is don't burn. I choose B. And I guess Nick chose B as well. Still burns, but noticing that there is another life.
Come in, come in, come in, come into this wonderful life. And when you find it, and when you find it's a wonderful life that you bring. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful life.